Leon Todd for G66. Welcome to another Tuesday Tone Tip. On today's video, we're taking a look at parallel routing on the VP4. I've been asked by a lot of people whether the VP4 supports not just parallel routing, but the ability to set all of the effects to 100% wet or kill dry mode to use in a wet dry wet setup with a line mixer or to replace a large rack or pedal board. So we're going to take a look at some of those options. But before we do, I have dialed in a quick preset with all the blocks in series just for some lush 80s cleans. We've got the large chamber reverb, we've got some dual detune, and then we've got the PCM pan and circular, which are based on the iconic Lexicon PCM 70. And there was a classic use case of the PCM 70 being run in parallel with two different delays. We'll get to that. First, we'll just hear each of these effects and how they complement this really nice clean tone from my Strat. Gorgeous stuff, but you'll notice that I've got those two delay blocks cascading into one another, and the echoes are interacting in a way that's not super clean and discrete. If you like that, leave it. Personally, I would like to have the pan delays and the circular delays fed from that pitch block separately in parallel and then fed into the reverb. Now, to do that, on the editor, you can go to the mix and routing window. You can also do this on the physical hardware using the same process. So you can see we get this mix overview, which I find really handy. This gives me all four blocks, and we can quickly go in and adjust the mix, the level, the channel, the bypass mode, and whether the blocks are set up in kill dry mode, which is very handy indeed. Then we have this routing tab, and I can go through and select each block to either be in series or parallel. For example, if I wanted this second block in parallel, I can set that up. So it's going to be parallel to the pitch. That's not what I want. I want the second and third blocks in parallel. So I am going to select this effects 3 to be in parallel over there. I could take it even further and set the reverb and the second block in parallel so that they're all being fed. We'll come back to that in a second, but for now, I want this routing over here where the two multi-tap delays are set up in parallel. Now, let's just have a quick listen to what that does. It's also going to be a little bit louder because of the routing. Sounds great. That level discrepancy can be fixed really easily by going back to the mix overview window, taking the last block that is in parallel and just engaging the kill dry feature. That way, no dry signal is going to leak through this part of the chain. We're going into our pitch. That's feeding the two multi-tap delay blocks separately, but the dry signal is just coming through this top block over here, and our levels are back to being where they should be. You can see when I bypassed each of those multi-tap delay blocks, there was no gain staging issues. Everything remained at the same volume. It was just bringing in the wet effects as desired. So if you're just living in the VP4, that's how you could set up parallel routing for 2 blocks, or 3 blocks, or 4 blocks. But if you were using this, say, with an external line mixer, and you wanted all of those blocks to essentially independently operate and be able to blend in the wet effects, Here's how you could do it. I would route them all in parallel. So we'll go through here. We'll just set all of these to parallel. Now you can see that the dry signal individually feeds each effect block over here. Then they are summed at the end of the chain. I can then go back to the mix overview and just engage kill dry across all of those blocks. Then I can use the mix control on here to just balance out my effects. And if I'm on the editor or if I'm on the hardware mix view window, this gives me instant access to the mix on all 4 blocks. It's like an old rack system where you can just grab 1 knob, 2 knob, 3 knob, and 4 knobs on your individual units. It's just so much smaller. So let's hear that now. That's just one specific use case of parallel routing that focuses on those classic 80s tones, but I know so many of you out there love those classic 80s tones just like me. Let's do something a little different and something which would be really difficult to achieve with real-world gear. We're going to set up some parallel overdrives. So what I've got at the moment is a big muff style fuzz. I've got the Timmy in the down mode, and I've got a tube screamer. I've got a parametric EQ, which I'm going to use to shape everything. But for now, I'll just let you hear the individual effects. This would be a classic pedal board style setup. You just connect the 3 drives and you stack them. Pretty crazy. There is so much gain happening on there. There's also a lot of noise, and what we're doing is we're cascading multiple gain stages. Personally, when I'm using cascading drives, I like to add a little bit of drive in each section. There we were adding a lot of drive with the muff and a lot with the Timmy, but what we can do is essentially use each of these. Think of the big muff as handling the low end, the Timmy as handling the mids, and the tube screamer as handling some of the high frequency or high mids in there. What we're going to do is go to the mix and routing menu, and we will route the first 3 blocks in parallel. So now we have 3 drives over here, and each one we can adjust the level of and essentially use it to focus on a particular part of the spectrum. We're going to get a very different effect to what we had before. There's going to be a lot more clarity. Running 3 drives in the real world, if you were mixing analog and digital pedals, can be really difficult to deal with phase issues, and you would need a complex router or mixer to do all of this. But here on the VP4, it's really straightforward. pretty unique. One great thing about all Fractal gear is it can allow you to access sounds that, like I said earlier, would either be impossible or very expensive or frustrating and difficult to achieve with traditional rigs. I like that on this mix overview here, you can just quickly tweak the levels. You can do that on the software or the hardware again. I just had a parametric EQ at the end of the chain there to cut some low end and overall sculpt the sound. A setup like this would be super handy on bass guitar. You could run a compressor for the low end. You could run one or two different drives and then another EQ or another compressor at the end of the chain to really emulate a great studio setup or a biamp style rig on there. But there's no reason why you can't do it on electric guitar or any other instrument either. So there's two very straightforward examples of using the VP4 for parallel effects routing. Let me know what sort of parallel effect setups you like to use in the comments section below. Do you keep it pretty simple, like an old school rack setup? Do you like using parallel drives to get sounds that you can't get out of traditional gear? Or do you have some amazing ideas for combining different blocks to get some unique effects? Let me know in the comment section below. If you have any questions or suggestions, drop them there as well. There's more information in the video description, and I'll see you all next week. Take it easy.